Welcome to Choose the Bear, a podcast for people living single and or child-free, or who are just curious about a life built on independence, intention, and joy. Because being single and child-free isn't a phase, it's a path. I'm your host, Kat Calvin. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second to last episode before the season break, and I have to tell you, season 2 is already shaping up to be amazing. I'm so geeked out and just thrilled and honored by the really incredible guests who have already said yes to being in season 2. So stay tuned. I will be working hard over the break to bring an even better season 2 than ever before. But today we have a really, really inspirational guest. Robert Suttle, who experienced something that we never talk about. And we talk a little in our conversation about why it is something that's talked about, which is the criminalization of HIV. And it's something that we need to talk about, because it is a thing that has happened to many, many, many people, but also even just looking through the lens of single women, HIV and AIDS is something that is impacting women greatly, and particularly in certain parts of the country and the world. And it's a thing that we just are not talking about enough. And so it was amazing to have this conversation with Robert. I think it's a really important subject. It's also something that just deserves a lot more airtime than it's getting. So hopefully you will be just as inspired and probably angry as I was. Enjoy. So here we are at the last episode of the season, and I am really thrilled because we're ending it with a really good friend of mine who is brilliant and absolutely wonderful, and I think we can learn a lot from. And because I've already started recording interviews for season 2, and I just have some really, really extraordinary people coming up, so I think it will be worth the wait. So hopefully you will enjoy this episode with the incredible Ivelyse Andino, and enjoy the 2-month break, and season 2 will be here in October. So there we go. Well, everyone, you are in for a treat today. We are ending season 1 with one of my favorite people in the entire world. It's funny because I've had a lot of friends on the podcast, because I'm lucky to have a lot of very brilliant and incredible friends. And most of them, actually, now that I think about it, were Roddenberry Fellows, either in my class or in other classes, which is a fellowship that I did that I really loved and adored. And Ivy and I were in the same class and have been friends ever since. And she is a total powerhouse, a baddie, an amazing, amazing woman. Who knows far less about Star Trek than she should, but otherwise is perfect. So the marvelous Ivelyse Andino, hello. Thanks for being here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. You know, I'm working day by day on my Star Trek knowledge, but one day we have hope. But it really is a joy to be here. So thank you for having me.
So before we get started, just tell everyone all about you. Who are you?
All about me. So I'm Ivelyse or Ivelyse Andino. I use both pronunciations, largely because I speak 2 languages. I'm born and raised in the Bronx, proud Afro-Latina. And when I'm not traipsing around New York City, I spend a lot of my days working on Radical Health, where I'm a founder and CEO of the company, where we make sure that no one has to help alone. I'm a mom to a brilliant 10-year-old, and I'm really in a space of being and living out some of the values that I think growing up were hard to do. And so When I'm not working and caring for my kid, I really try to find joy in nature and relaxation and community. And so that's who I am today.
Tomorrow, a completely different person.
Correct.
So talk about, give people just sort of a primer on what radical health is and does, and how and why you started it.
Yeah, so Radical Health started really because of my own personal journey. I grew up in a place where all I wanted to do was get out of the hood, have a fancy job, be a doctor, have a picket fence and a dog, and live a happy life. Really early on, when I started in undergrad, I went in declaring that I was going to be a doctor. And little did I know there was a lot more work that needs to be done from even earlier than just undergrad. And so it was my first reality kind of check that told me that anything to do in healthcare really, right, was going to be a little more difficult. The good news is that I somehow worked it out. I didn't become a doctor, but ended up working in healthcare in pharmaceutical companies, and then ultimately started really early in health tech. So in the early 2000s, I worked at a few health tech startups, really bringing this idea of digital therapeutics, digital health to market. And while that was super cool and fun, it really left a lot to be desired because what I was doing wasn't impacting the community that I was from. So the short of it is I started Radical Health with this idea and this quest that health tech and community and support throughout your healthcare journey really needed to be a mainstay. Radical Health today provides community support through peers where you can talk about what you're experiencing. We also have an online community that helps you navigate your healthcare journey by knowing your rights, knowing what questions to ask, along with figuring out how do you get like a second opinion. And in addition to that, we support the next generation of healthcare workers that we believe will be with lived experiences, and support upskilling existing healthcare workers so that they can lead more compassionately and culturally and humanely in the work that they do.
I love it. I think every time I tell people about radical health, I describe it in a different way. You think memorize that little elevator pitch. So one of the things I think that is most notable about you is that you bring your full Ivy-ness to everything. In everything, you're going to talk about the Bronx. You're going to bring your Afro-Latina self. You're going to bring your very sort of powerful, very feminine self to everything. And you have been wildly successful, not just with Radical Health, but you've been on New York City Commission, and you've been, a fellow in all these things. You're so incredibly successful in a lot of very traditional spaces while fully bringing who you are. It is not a thing that you hold back at all. What has that looked like for you in your career, and how do you think you've been able to be so successful in these very traditional spaces while being you?
It's so funny that you say that because most days I would not define myself as very successful in these traditional spaces. I know, and it's wild because I think I still very much have my own challenges with, how I'm supposed to be, how I'm supposed to act, what I'm supposed to do. Like, what are the standards and norms that I'm supposed to do? And then I have this internal dialogue, this internal coach that's like, fuck all of that. You're still that you have to show up with what's real and honest. And so I think, to answer your question, I think the reason that I am successful, even though oftentimes I don't feel that way, is because it took a journey, but I ultimately came up with my own mantra, you can call it, my own credo of I always need to be true to me. This world will tell me a million different ways who I need to be, how I need to be, and where I need to be in that. When I wake up in the morning, my one job is to line up basically, and show up in ways that are true to me and in a way that I'm going to be proud of. And so when that looks like transferred into traditional spaces, I think that oftentimes some of these traditional spaces don't get to see authenticity. And when they do, and they see it maybe so boldly and bravely, it is like, I like to say, real recognize real. There is a recognition of like, oh shit, okay, like this is refreshing. And that's something that I often hear of. Your energy is infectious. This is refreshing. Oh wow is another word, and that could be good or bad. But I think that because I'm true to myself, it allows and has created pathways for me in traditional spaces um, where that can be recognized and really embraced.
Yeah, I think that from an outside perspective, it is very much the fact that you are definitely just being you, but you're also very open to everyone else being themselves. In the progressive activist space in which we both live, there are a lot of people who are pretending to be whatever they are, or they're very much them, but they want everyone else to change how they're behaving to match.
Yeah.
And you're just like, no, you can be this and you can be this, and I'm gonna be this, and we're all gonna be in a room together and be great.
Yes, I think that's actually, thank you for highlighting that because I think that's the other thing where I really try to operate with no judgment. And for the most part, I get to of like, there's, whatever is your thing, that's your thing. And we can all exist with our things together. Um, and so I think it really does make for, if you want to be a little more conservative and, and it just in a certain way, cool beans, like that's great. That's wonderful. And if you want to be something else, like I always joke that like there's nothing that you can say that will shock me. And I tell this a lot to young people, but I tell this to adults. There's nothing that you can tell me that's going to shock me because one, I've probably dabbled or been in proximity to some of these things. But more than that, like, how beautiful, like whatever it is, the experience, how beautiful. And we can move from there.
So how does that show up in your role as a leader, in your organization, as a manager, as a mentor? How do you show up there?
Yeah, so I think that actually has like two parts of it. I'll say something else about me. I'm always going to be honest and vulnerable. Like I don't have all the questions, and it's usually a shit show that I'm working through. But when I think about myself as a leader, I think what I know is that I allow myself and my team and the people we work with to name the things, to say the things that often go unsaid. We've recently been working with a client and a partner, and they've asked us to do a series of trainings. And they're asking us to do the impossible. How do you shift culture at a healthcare organization from one that's really just, again, way more traditional, but really has low morale? And oftentimes in these meetings, I have to just say, hey, we're just going to name the things. Let's just name what we know to be true. We're working within a healthcare system that is top down. There's a lot of power in leadership. The people who have the low morale don't have a lot to say. And my ability to name the thing creates a lot of space then for everyone else to do it. And in that same vein of, there's nothing you can say that's going to shock me, like we can call a thing and then move forward from it. And so I think that allows, again, for a lot of opportunity to speak up, to share ideas. On the flip side, the challenge is that sometimes I can be too accepting as a manager of like, oh, your cat is sick today. Take all the time you need. And oh, your goldfish tomorrow. Oh.
Yeah. I think it's also we go like millennial problem. Like we grew up with such terrible bosses that we end up being way too I'm so overly accommodating, and I've been so putting employees be like, you're too nice, and I've been taken advantage of. But it's hard because I'm like, well, if your dog is sick, you shouldn't work. Like, take
the day, take the week, go for it. So it's definitely, I think, a challenge for me and a growth area for me to recognize that as open and as accepting as I am as a human being, and that I want to run an organization, and I do, that is the same way, that we do have to have common values and common goals, and we're all working towards something, and the work that we do ultimately benefits, and is for other people, not for ourselves. So how do we hold true what we need to be true for ourselves, but how do we stand up and show up for everyone else?
I love that. So with radical health then, because I mean, I think you built it in your own image, right? Of looking at, here's my community coming from the Bronx. I'm Afro-Latina. There is a real gap in not even just sort of healthcare services, but in people who understand and will talk to us like people when we're in these healthcare spaces. No one is worse at looking at people and speaking to them like people than doctors.
Yeah.
And so you've built this sort of community platform. What can we take from what you guys do at Radical Health and apply it to the healthcare system at large? Or what should we?
Oh man,
But
how about just, people are human beings across the board? That one's an easy one. But I think when we look at the healthcare system at large, I'm going to do it, but there's a historical component that we just have to name and say. The healthcare system that we know today and that we've known in existence for the last 60 plus years really was rooted in white supremacy and created to extend the life of white slave owners in the United States. It took indigenous practices and botany and science, but largely experimenting on folks. So to start from there, it's to name that what we know today that largely fails a lot of us and most people, regardless of who you are, your skin color, your socioeconomic status, it doesn't really work for most of us, but it's rooted in that today. So if we were going to take lessons from Radical Health to apply, one of the things that we highlight, right, is this idea that everyone is an expert. Now, we're all going to be experts in different things, but we allow for everyone to come together to learn and to share. So that means we might have an expert, maybe it is a doctor, maybe it's a PA or a nurse who knows the science and knows the mechanism. Actually, I don't want anybody else giving me any kind of drugs besides the person who spent 8 years studying this. But that also you could have patients, caregivers, transport, the folks who wheel you back and forth. Those folks are actually really smart and have a lot of expertise in what they see every day and what they're observing. So I think the ability to apply that to our healthcare system where everyone has an opportunity and the space to share and learn from each other is one of the things that we don't see. We probably don't see that in most orgs, right? We're all siloed in every way. But, that's one of the lessons. The other lesson is that for us, we have these peer groups in our circles where people come together. And what we noted is that for folks who participate in one circle alone, which is just talking with friends about a health topic, with the most improvement after 4 sessions where you talk, again, 4 times, people report their self-reported quality of life increases. So we're seeing less anxiety, we're seeing less depression, we're seeing more engagement with actual doctors or nurses and getting the care that you need. People are signing up to go get a mammogram, a checkup, colonoscopies for especially men. They're taking action. And so there's something to be said about when we have an opportunity to connect with one another, whether it is in our place of work or with peers who are going through similar things, that we will see an increase in the way our lives are lived. So if we could apply that, we might have something better in our healthcare systems.
I found that really interesting because my next question was going to be, okay, well, how does this apply to single women? But I think one of the things that we talk about on this show, we've talked a lot about sort of health equity for single women and sort of challenges that we particularly have in the health field, but also the need for community and the fact that if you are going to choose to be single and child-free, there's more of a need for community, although the loneliest women I've ever met have been married. So I think that everybody...
Well.
But, like that we are putting more of a focus on friendships and deep friendships and community and relationships because we need that. And you just sort of combine those two things in a way, when I think about, well, who do I talk about? Like health stuff with, it's my friends and we'll text each other and be like, oh, I went to the doctor or this happened or whatever. And that helps normalize or helps, we're getting to an age where like perimenopause is happening. So my friends who've already
Mhm.
through it have been giving me a lot of like advice for what to look out for and what happened to them. And so it feels like this approach can be particularly powerful for women who are choosing to live solo lives, because we may be living solo lives at home, but we need that community. And that is going to be something that really impacts positively both our health and our interactions with the healthcare system.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we have some conversation guides that we share for folks to help get the conversation started. But I think that that idea of like marking time, whether it's through a group chat and it's, the first Sunday of every quarter, we're just going to talk about, and the way that we would look at it too, at least from a radical health stance, is sure, there's, September is breast cancer month, and you can do it thematically, but we really like to get at too of like, what are you concerned about? What are you afraid of? What are you not moving on? What do you want to be moving on? And sometimes those are the things that we carry. There's a great book, The Body Keeps the Score, and then another one called What My Bones Know. Stephanie, I'm going to forget her last name. I think it's Fu, wrote that book. But it talks about these are the things that we carry in our bodies that no matter who you are or gender, when you're experiencing trauma, stress, like your body is still going to recognize it. And so the idea that you can come together as women, I would agree with you that married women are some of the loneliest women. Coming from a divorce myself, there's, I think there really is an invitation to what do we need to know in our brains to be better, do better, and take care of ourselves? But what is it that we're carrying with us in our hearts that don't often have space to be shared? Or we might feel nervous. I have a pain in my breast and I'm afraid because I know that I need to get a mammogram, but I'm afraid to because what if? And I think those are the great pockets of care that we all need, but that we can create for one another together to help us move in this journey.
Yeah, absolutely. That also makes me think of a thing that I hear you say. So on the other side, just talking about radical listening, and
Mhm.
that if we're going to be having these community conversations, we need to be as good at listening or better than we are at sharing. So can you talk a little bit about radical listening?
Oh my gosh, yes. So we often say that, like, if you're not talking, you have the most important job, and that is to be listening, right? Like, and the idea is not listening to respond, but really listening. The method that we use, and you can apply some of this in your everyday life, is we use a talking piece, one person at one time. But more than just the idea of like one person is talking, one person is listening, is that that talking piece goes in an order. You can do it
Is this like a physical thing, like a teddy bear or something that you share, or
It can be physical. If you were all sitting at the brunch table, it can be physical. It could be literally the knife off of your table. Um, but it can be virtual too. And it just means that there's an order of how we're going to speak.
okay.
So if you have three people, it could be, all right, everyone in alphabetical order or in age order. But that's the circle that you're going to go through. And one, it will allow everyone to get a shot at talking. And the reality is we probably know a bunch of friends who might listen all the way and not share, or the folks who are going to jump in and take over all the time with thoughts and ideas. But going in that order really equalizes that conversation. And I think that, and you could always pass, is how we say, but that it's a little bit of the facilitated structure that allows for that listening to happen. And some people might not like it at first, but ultimately it gives everyone a chance to share, but everyone has the opportunity to listen. And I think that, when you're listening, I know me, I get anxious, I get a little worried. And, I would often ask, like, whatever that feeling is coming up when you want to check in and jump in, or when you don't want to sit still, like, it's worth inviting. Like, what is that uncomfortableness? What is the not stillness that you have? Are you anxious? Are you worried? Are you scared? Are you, what's happening there? Because it usually is a deeper feeling, but listening is probably the best thing we can do, and listening to listen, not to respond.
Yeah. So now I'm sure everyone listening is like, well, now I want to be part of this radical health So can you talk about where you guys are, just like how folks can be part of this, but also what you would recommend for folks who are in an area where there is no radical health yet, to bring some of this into their lives?
Yeah, so this is a good question. We are in the middle. We've been around now for 9 years, a long time in the startup tech good work time. And we are in New York and in the state of California. So if you're in both of those states, we are getting ready actually to release a public facing community where you can sign up, join in on these circles. We want to make sure that, this is available to you. If you are not in any one of those states, but you want radical health around, we do provide training. So that's where we can come in, if you have a team, a group. At this point, if you have friends who want to just learn how to do this, like, we will work it out so that you have access, right, to the ability to host these conversations. We also have, I mentioned, conversation guides that will script you through the conversations at hand. And, what we are really looking at is, the state of the world today, July 2025. We have a lot of policies and bills in place that are designed to strip us and strip America ultimately, right, of some of the protections and the social safety nets, especially in healthcare. And what we are prepping for, and a lot of the work that we're doing that we hope to make available to everyone soon, is to increase our footprint in providing these social safety nets, these social safety care, these circles, the community, and really the infrastructure, which I think we all need to, so that people can just jump in and connect. And so, we'll see where things are going, but our goal is, for the next few years to continue to roll out radical health in every state. And so that no matter where you are, you can find a community to connect with. You can find the tools that you need and the education you need to know what's happening with your local laws and policies and how to navigate your health in that way. And that if you're working at a place or want to be in a healthcare career, that you can find the skills to upskill or enter in to your workplace and workforce in a way that's meaningful and connected.
I love that. And then last question, kind of related, but not really. The whole world right now is stressed out. And we know that stress and anxiety and all these things are horrible for your health. What are ways that you are finding, or hope to find, I think I'm being rather presumptuous, that are helping you stay calm, stay peaceful, stay grounded, stay healthy in a moment when it feels like, sort of the sky is falling?
Yes. I mean, if you feel like the sky is falling, you're not alone. You're not abnormal, very normal given these times. And I've been advising folks, it's the same advice I give my kid. I try to practice it myself, but I have a kid who's 10, going to be 11, and is just now getting into the internet. And so obviously not unsupervised, but during supervised times. And every time he's about to open the iPad or use my phone or use a laptop, we have this conversation and it goes, I'm like, hey, all right, you're going to go on now. What do you do if something is too scary, you feel overwhelmed, and you can't handle it anymore? You don't like what you see on the screen. And they'll look at me and roll their eyes and say, oh, you just turn it off and walk away and go touch grass. And so my practice right now is, as the world is crumbling and I'm feeling overwhelmed, right? It's the same practice of turn it off, turn it off. You have power. Turn off the screens, turn off the phone, put it down, chuck it in your freezer and close the door and walk outside and touch grass. Now touching grass, it might be a piece of concrete if you're in New York City like me, but go touch the tree, go for a walk, but turn it off. There's so much beauty rather in our existence right here, right now, in our communities, in one another. You can find it. You just really have to turn off the screens. The other thing that I'm doing for me, and it is really trying to touch grass, is I just will go on a walk. That has been my new thing. I'm like, whoop, we're just going to go for a walk It can be around the block. It can be to the corner. It can be 5 steps out and 5 steps back inside. But ultimately taking a break from what feels like this like augmented reality TV show that we can't turn off. It feels like life is like a really bad season of Love Island. We can't get out of it. But we have agency, we have power in ourselves, and ultimately, like in one another, is where we'll find, I think, a lot of relief. And if not relief, kind of reassurance that you're not alone in it, that you're not the only one feeling overwhelmed, you're not the only one who's scared or worried or anxious, that actually there are a lot of people who feel just like you, but it feels worse when you're alone feeling those things.
Ivy, thank you. Thank you for being you. Thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much. This has been the best part of my day, so thank you.
Thanks for listening to Choose the Bear. The best way to support this podcast is to leave a review and share it with someone who might love it too. It really helps. See you next time.